Hello again. This is Dr. Michael Arnhem here again. My name up there. As I've said before, if you want to watch parts 1 and 2, there is a Wikipedia page with my biography. Just look up Michael Arnhem. And I'm addressing this to you, THERESA, again. Are you watching? You never read my articles, my blogs, my open letters addressed to you. I was very disappointed. And so should you be, because you would be in a far better position now if you had. Please pay attention, THERESA. This is for your benefit. Now, in the second part, I talked about your program called Prevent, supposedly to prevent extremism, and explained why it's going nowhere fast and is not going to succeed. It's completely misconceived. So that's one part of your muddled approach to terrorism. But then you have another aspect to your general approach to human rights, and that is somehow a libertarian streak. Although I think maybe you've got over that now. But certainly early on in your days as Home Secretary, do you remember when you authorized the shredding of all the ID cards and the ID database that the Labour government, prior to the coalition, the Labour government expended so much money and effort on, and yet your junior minister, Damien Green, gleefully shredded all that, the ID cards, and in fact the database as well. And here is what he said. You can find a discussion of it in my book, A Practical Guide to Your Human Rights and Civil Liberties, on page 163. Although scrapping the scheme would save money, Damien Green said that was not the reason for its cancellation. Quote, "We wanted to do this as a matter of principle," unquote. What principle? Nick Clegg, the Liberal Democrat Deputy Prime Minister, was quick to explain, quote, "The ID card scheme was a direct assault on our liberty, something too precious to be tossed aside, and something which this government is determined to restore. The government is committed to rolling back as much state interference as humanly possible, and the destruction of the register is only the beginning." And your junior minister, Damien Green, was shown gleefully feeding the last batch of 500 hard drives containing what was to be the National Identity Register, feeding it into a giant shredder. That was in 2011. This marks the final end of the identity card scheme. Dead, buried, and crushed, he said. What a wonderful triumph that was. A triumph for what? A triumph for terrorism, actually, because you need some kind of register of identification of the people in your country. Which country doesn't have that? Yes, there may be some. Outer Mongolia, possibly, I don't know. Even the United States of America, which most people think doesn't have identity cards, does actually have them in the form of driver's licenses. When I was living as a visiting professor in California, and I obviously went shopping in various places, I was constantly being asked for a driving license. Now, of course, they weren't interested in a foreign driving license. They wanted a California driver's license. Even an Idaho driver's license wasn't good enough. An Oklahoma driver's license, no. It had to be a California driver's license. I wasn't going to go and have a new driving test just for that, but I was told by a friendly merchant, go to the DLV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they will provide you, upon payment of, I think it was $5, they will provide you with a card, your photograph on it. They will take your photograph and they will provide you with a card which is used for ID purposes. To all intents and purposes, it's the same as an American driver's license. It looks the same, only around the edge it says, this is not a driver's license. A little card like all American driver's license. That is what is needed. They need two forms of ID in most places in America. They don't believe anyone who tells you that they don't have ID in America. They do. But because of your scrapping of the ID system in Britain, you have no idea how many illegal immigrants there are in the country, do you? No idea. According to Migration Watch UK, accurate numbers of illegal immigrants are not possible, but there could be as many as 1 million illegal immigrants in the UK, adding removals of immigration offenders are very low. A significant increase in resources for this purpose is essential. Essential. What a wonderful day that was when you scrapped all those ID cards and the register. What a wonderful day for terrorism. Because that is how the terrorists are hiding. There are thousands of terrorists hiding in Britain right now. And you don't know where they are. You don't know how many there are. And fortunately, we do have very good security services. And they have been able to prevent, not with your program called Prevent, but they have been able to thwart a number of terrorist outrages before they happened, which is very good, but no thanks to you. Another problem is the crackdown. As Migration Watch pointed out, it's very difficult to remove illegal immigrants. And you have found that. Even people who are terrorist suspects and who have been served with deportation orders you have found very difficult to deport. Why? Because the courts have become extremely politically correct. And, for example, they have been using Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights to prevent people from being deported. Article 3. Article 3 is the article against torture, because these people who are slated for deportation almost invariably say, oh no, you can't deport me, because if I go back to my country, I'm going to be murdered. I'm going to be treated unfairly. I'm going to be, something or other bad will happen to me. Especially torture. Torture is the one big thing. There's never any proof of that. Quite the reverse. The British government over the past number of years has actually managed to get assurances from many third world countries, governments of third world countries, to say, we guarantee that if these people who are our nationals are returned to our country, we will not torture them. The British government has guarantees like that, piles of them. Doesn't that solve the problem? No, because the courts have routinely rejected those assurances and preferred to believe the vague concerns of these people who were intended for deportation. Said, well, if there's a possibility that they will be tortured, we can't allow them to be deported. As a result, you have been hamstrung. Your policy has been hamstrung by the courts. How can that be allowed to carry on? It's a complete nonsense. Nonsense. Now, this country, Britain, is supposedly under the sovereignty of Parliament. And the sovereignty of Parliament effectively means the government, because Parliament is normally controlled in practice by the government. So the British system of government is not the same as the American one. The American one has three co-equal branches: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The British Constitution is not like that. In the British Constitution, the legislature, Parliament, is supposed to be sovereign. What does that mean? Interestingly enough, Lord Neuberger, the retiring president of the Supreme Court, has himself given you a hint on how you could possibly handle this problem in a most remarkable statement that he made in a speech that he gave recently in Oxford. This is what he said. Parliament can always reverse any decision of a court by legislation. In a speech concerned with the role of judges under a constitutional system based on parliamentary sovereignty, he said, it is perhaps appropriate to end with a reminder that any judicial decision can be revoked by Parliament through a statute. What does that mean? Parliament can pass a law revoking, that means cancelling, any decision of a court. Any. Did you know that, THERESA? I really wonder if you did. And even if you did, would you have acted on it? It's time now to act on that. It's a very salutary warning coming from the top of the judiciary. Very, very unusual that a judge should himself recommend that the government, or Parliament to be precise, should revoke a decision of a court. Judges tend to like their decisions to be respected. But of course, Lord Neuberger's point is valid and very important. Practical. There was the most famous case where that was done was a case called Burma Oil against Lord Advocate. Burma Oil, spelt with an H on the end, B-U-R-M-A-H. Burma Oil and Lord Advocate, 1964. That was a case that went all the way up to the House of Lords, which at that time was still the highest court. House of Lords as a court. Burma Oil was suing the government over the loss of a lot of money in World War II, because when in World War II there was the threat that Japan might be occupying Burma, the British government asked the oil companies to destroy their oil fields, costing them a lot of money. After the war, Burma Oil asked the government for compensation. The government refused. So Burma Oil took the government to court. It went all the way up to the House of Lords as a court, and Burma Oil won. But the government did not pay them the money. The decision of the court is still regarded as an example of constitutional law. Lord Reid, who gave the main speech, as it was called, main judgment in that case, was regarded as a great constitutional lawyer. And what he said in that case is still quoted as constitutional law. But of course, that case has been shredded. Yes, the way you shredded the ID cards. That judgment is now waste paper. Why? Because the government, the following year, 1965, passed a law, Parliament, to be precise, under the guidance of the government, passed a law called the War Damage Act, which revoked the court decision in Burma Oil and Lord Advocate. Revoked it, cancelled. So the House of Lords as a court said, you, the government, need to pay Burma Oil this money. Parliament said, no, we cancel that. You don't even have to give a reason. There wasn't a good legal reason, actually, for revoking that. There are plenty of good legal reasons for revoking judicial decisions nowadays, but you've never done it, have you? Did you ever even know about it? I hope you do now, because it's really important. And let me finish with another very, very interesting warning and very salutary warning given by Lord Neuberger, the retiring, as I said, retiring President of the UK Supreme Court. On the 8th of August 2017, this is what Lord Neuberger told the BBC. If the government does not express clearly what the judges should do about decisions of the European Court of Justice after Brexit, or indeed any other topic after Brexit, then the judges will simply have to do their best. Adding, but to blame the judges, he said, but to blame the judges for making the law when Parliament has failed to do so would be unfair, unquote. He added some more. All judges, quote, would hope and expect Parliament to spell out how the judges would approach that sort of issue after Brexit, and to spell it out in a statute. He's, unquote. Lord Neuberger, a judge, is pleading for Parliament, obviously with the guidance of the government, pleading for Parliament to tell the judges what to do about decisions of the European Court of Justice after Brexit, and here's the important phrase, or indeed any other topic after Brexit. Why? Lord Neuberger himself has been known to adopt a fairly politically correct line from time to time in the past. But here he is warning the government against it. He is saying that unless Parliament gives this guidance to the judges, they will basically, he puts it very, very gingerly, the judges will simply have to do their best. What does that mean? It means that the judges will continue, as so many of them are now doing, making up the law on a politically correct basis, following the line of the European Court of Human Rights, and sometimes going even ahead of it. Judges aren't supposed to make up the law. But his point is, in the absence of guidance from Parliament, what else can the judges do? The judges, he even says the judges would hope and expect Parliament to spell out, in other words, to say in detail how the judges would approach that sort of issue after Brexit. He's pleading for some guidance from Parliament, which means basically the government. Otherwise, the judges will make the law on the basis, as unfortunately all too many of them are now doing, on the basis of political correctness. Have you heard that plea, THERESA? Did you understand it? Would you ever have the courage to act on it anyway? I hope so. How long was that one?
25 minutes.
Ah, right. So